It was a Sunday morning in September of 1982, the kind of morning that felt safe, the kind of morning that felt like nothing bad could ever happen. The air was cool and a little misty, the way September mornings always feel in the Midwest. The neighborhood was quiet. Most families were still asleep. The smell of coffee hadn't even started drifting through kitchen windows yet. Kids rode their bikes freely in those days. Nobody locked their doors. Parents didn't worry when their children stepped outside before sunrise to do their paper routes. That was just life. That was just how America worked back then. And on that particular Sunday morning, in a quiet suburb of Des Moines, Iowa, a 12-year-old boy named Johnny Gosch picked up his bundle of newspapers, loaded them into his little red wagon, and walked out into the mist. He never came back. If you grew up in the 70s or 80s, you know exactly what that world felt like. You rode your bike until the streetlights came on. You played outside all day, and your mom didn't know exactly where you were, and that was completely normal. You trusted your neighbors. You trusted your town. There was a feeling in those years, a deep, unspoken feeling that your neighborhood was a kind of protective bubble, that the bad things you heard about on the news happened somewhere else, to someone else, in some other world that was far away from your front yard. The story of Johnny Gosch is the story of the morning that feeling died for an entire generation of Americans. Johnny Gosch was not just any 12-year-old boy. By all accounts, he was a bright, responsible, and cheerful kid who took his paper route seriously. He was one of those boys who made his parents proud in small, everyday ways. He had taken over this particular paper route, and he was known in his neighborhood as reliable. He showed up. He did his job. On the morning of September 5th, 1982, Johnny woke up early, as he always did, to deliver the Des Moines Register to the homes on his route. His father, John Gosch Sr., was supposed to go with him that morning, but for reasons that would haunt the family for decades, that plan fell through. Johnny went alone. He left the house before dawn. A neighbor named Mike Reap saw Johnny that morning near the corner of Marcourt Lane. Johnny had stopped to talk to a man in a car. A strange man. Someone nobody recognized. Mike thought it was odd but didn't think much of it at the time. Why would he? In 1982, a kid talking to a grown-up near the road was not an alarm. It was just a moment. It was just a Sunday morning. Within minutes, Johnny Gosch was gone. His little red wagon was found abandoned on the sidewalk. The newspapers were still in it, undelivered. His dog, which had followed him out that morning, was found wandering alone. When Johnny didn't come home, his mother Noreen Gosch called the police. And what happened next is one of the most frustrating and heartbreaking chapters in this entire story. The Des Moines Police Department refused to file a missing persons report. Not the next day, not even after several hours. They told Noreen that they had a policy. They would not file a report until the child had been missing for 72 hours. 72 hours. Think about that for a moment. A 12-year-old boy vanishes in the early morning hours. His wagon is sitting abandoned on a sidewalk. A witness saw him talking to a strange man, and the police said they had to wait 3 days before they could officially call him missing. In those critical first hours, when investigators could have searched the area, when witnesses were still fresh, when any trail that existed was still warm, the police did nothing. Noreen Gosch did not wait. She went door to door herself. She stood on street corners and asked people if they had seen her son. She organized her own search. She made flyers. She called everyone she could think of. She was a mother operating on pure terror and pure instinct while the system that was supposed to protect her family stood completely still. This failure of the early investigation is something that investigators and journalists would look back on for years and years as one of the reasons this case was never solved. Those first hours mattered, and they were wasted. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks turned into months, something remarkable and deeply troubling began to emerge. Johnny Gosch was not the only one. Around the same country in those same years, other children were disappearing under similar circumstances. Other paperboys, other early morning routes, other quiet suburban neighborhoods where nobody thought anything like this could happen. Investigators would later suggest that Johnny may have been taken by an organized network, a group of people who specifically targeted children in vulnerable, isolated moments. The paper route was perfect for them. A child alone before dawn, in the dark, with no witnesses, in a routine that never changed. But in 1982, most of America had no framework for thinking about something like this. The concept of organized child predator networks was barely discussed in public. Law enforcement agencies did not share information with each other the way they do today. There was no national database of missing children. There was no Amber Alert system. There was no internet to spread a child's photograph across the country in seconds. When a child went missing, the information stayed local. A family could put up flyers in their own town, and that was more or less where the reach ended. And then came the milk cartons. The milk carton campaign is one of those moments in American history that people who lived through it never forget. In 1984, a dairy company in Iowa began printing the photographs and descriptions of missing children on the sides of milk cartons. The idea spread quickly across the country. Suddenly, at breakfast tables in every state, families were looking at the faces of missing children while they poured milk into their cereal bowls. Johnny Gosch was one of the first children to appear on those cartons. His school photograph, that bright young face, staring out at millions of American families every single morning. For parents, it was a gut punch they felt every day. For children, it was confusing and frightening in a way that was hard to explain. You were sitting at the breakfast table, in your pajamas, in your safe house, in your safe neighborhood, and there was a missing child looking at you from your milk carton. It made the danger feel real and close in a way that nothing had before, and it changed parenting in America almost overnight. The era of letting kids roam freely began to end. Parents started walking their children to the bus stop. Rules were put in place. The phrase stranger danger entered the national conversation and embedded itself into the childhood experience of every kid growing up in America in the mid-80s. The world did not become more dangerous overnight, but the awareness of danger, the fear of danger, became something that lived inside American households in a way it never had before. And for the parents of the 70s generation, the ones who had grown up with that feeling of freedom and safety, the shift was deeply painful. You could feel the change happening in real time. You could feel the end of something. A kind of innocence that once belonged to American childhood was closing like a door, quietly but permanently, and the face of Johnny Gosch on that milk carton was one of the clearest symbols of that closing. Noreen Gosch became something more than a grieving mother during these years. She became a warrior. She lobbied Congress. She fought to change the laws that had stopped police from immediately investigating Johnny's disappearance. Because of her efforts, and the efforts of other families of missing children, the laws changed. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children was established in 1984. The requirement that police wait before filing a missing persons report for a child was eliminated. These were real, concrete changes that came directly from Noreen's refusal to be silent, her refusal to be told by a system that her pain had to wait. She never stopped looking for her son. She hired private investigators. She followed every lead. She traveled to speak with people who claimed to have information. She was mocked by some, dismissed by others, called unstable by people who could not understand how a mother could keep going after so many years without answers. But she kept going, because Johnny was her child, and as long as there was no confirmed answer, there was the possibility that he was alive somewhere in the world, and she was not going to stop until she found him. The years passed. Johnny would have been a teenager in the late 80s. He would have been a young man in the 90s. And then, in 1997, 15 years after that September morning, something happened that no one in this story could have predicted, and something that has never been fully explained. Noreen Gosch says that in the early hours of one March morning in 1997, she heard a knock at her door. It was approximately 2:30 in the morning. She opened the door, and standing on her doorstep was a young man in his late 20s. He was accompanied by another man. Noreen says that this young man was her son. He was alive. He told her he had been kidnapped as part of an organized network. He told her things about his childhood, specific private things that only Johnny could have known. He told her he could not stay. He told her that if he stayed, his life would be in danger. And then he left. Noreen described this encounter in interviews and in a book she wrote about the case. She was absolutely certain it was Johnny. She said he had physical characteristics she recognized, mannerisms she remembered, and knowledge of their family that a stranger could not have possessed. But there was no photograph taken that night. There was no official record of the visit. There were no witnesses beyond Noreen herself, and Johnny, if that is truly who visited her, has never come forward publicly. The reaction to Noreen's account was divided. Some people believed her completely. A mother knows her child. After 15 years of searching and suffering, she deserved to be believed. Others were more skeptical. They pointed to the lack of evidence, the vulnerability of a grieving mother who desperately wanted her son back, and the strangeness of a visit that left no trace. To this day, that 2:30 a.m. knock on the door remains one of the most haunting and debated details of the entire case. What followed added another layer of strange and disturbing complexity to the story. A man named Paul Bonacci came forward and claimed to have been involved in the network that abducted Johnny. His testimony was detailed and deeply disturbing. He claimed that Johnny had been taken by a sophisticated criminal organization that trafficked children across state lines and potentially across the country. Bonacci's claims were so specific and so unsettling that they attracted the attention of investigators, journalists, and conspiracy researchers for decades. Some of what he said has been supported by evidence. Some of it has not. The full truth of Paul Bonacci's testimony has never been definitively established in a court of law in relation to the Gosch case. What we do know is this: Johnny Gosch was a real boy. He had a mother who loved him. He had a father who carries guilt that no parent should ever have to carry. He had a neighborhood, a bedroom, a paper route, a little red wagon. He was 12 years old on the morning he disappeared, and he was never found. The Johnny Gosch case changed America in ways that are still felt today. The laws that protect missing children, the systems that exist to search for them, the public awareness that treats a missing child as an emergency from the very first second. These things exist in part because of what happened in Des Moines on that September morning, and because of a mother who refused to let the system forget her son. But there is something else this case gave to America. Something harder to measure and harder to accept. It gave a generation of parents a fear they had never carried before. It gave a generation of children a kind of careful, watchful awareness that their parents had not grown up with. It put a name on something that had always existed, but had never been spoken out loud in quite this way. It said to comfortable, trusting suburban America that the danger was not somewhere else. It was here. It was on your street. It was in the morning mist. It was in the moment when a child stepped outside alone and a stranger was waiting. If you are watching this video and you were alive in 1982, you probably remember exactly where you were when the world started to feel different. You probably remember when your parents started asking more questions about where you were going. You probably remember the faces on those milk cartons. You probably remember the feeling of something shifting, slowly, quietly, permanently, in the way Americans thought about safety and childhood and community. That shift began in many places and for many reasons, but one of those places was a quiet street in Des Moines, Iowa. And one of those reasons was a 12-year-old boy with a little red wagon and a paper route and a whole life ahead of him. Johnny Gosch would be 54 years old today. Wherever he is, whatever happened to him, his story is not over as long as people are still telling it. As long as his mother is still here, as long as we still remember his face from that milk carton at the breakfast table all those years ago. If you know anything about the disappearance of Johnny Gosch, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children can be reached at any time. Some cases are never closed, some doors are never fully shut, and some mothers never stop waiting. If this story moved you, hit that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe so you never miss a story like this one.